Hello and welcome to Falling in Love with Self Day 1, which is all about the mind. My name is Katie Spiller and I am the author and creator of this incredible course, which has come to me through inspiration and a lot of experience and a lot of learning and a lot of surrender. But I'm so grateful and passionate about bringing it to people and helping them to create a love for themselves that I wanted and needed and am so grateful for and is still evolving and that sort of thing. This is a huge passion of mine and I'm so grateful to bring it to you. So thank you for joining me on this journey. I'm going to start off with the screen share. We should be able to get all started from there. So this is Falling in Love with Self. So Catherine Spiller, I go by Katie, usually go by Katie. I'll just get the other component up as well. All right, here we are in day 1. We are in day 1 of 3 days, which is all about your mind. We're going to be diving into how to get control of it or a healthy respect for it. And yeah, let's get started. All right, congratulations, first and foremost, for acknowledging your desire to improve your most important relationship ever, the one that you have with yourself. Thank you for trusting me to share with you on such a divine and sacred topic. And these principles are universal. So basically, I speak from a female narrative, from my experience, as well as a lot of the things that I've studied and learnt. And that's just who I am. I am a female, mostly in my feminine. I try and balance it out with my masculine. However, the principles that are in here and the practices that are in this course are universal. And it's across all gender, all orientation, all ethnicities. So no matter how you identify yourself, you will have both the masculine and the feminine aspects to yourself. And this course really facilitates a growth in both and a balancing out of both as well. So if you're feeling triggered at any point, please take note of it, because basically wherever you're triggered or you start to feel resistance in a certain area, that's exactly where you need healing and growth. So we're going to be covering that in day 2, which has to do with the body. And yeah, so just make sure that you make a note of that and just suspend your judgment on it, judgment of yourself, judgment on the content, judgment of me. Even whenever you see yourself judging something, it's usually because there's some healing to do there. And we're going to go into that a lot more in day 2. So make sure you make a note of it so that you can come back to it when we're going through all of that. Where am I? All right, surrender to the process. This is your time, your space, and it won't feel comfortable all the time. Reserve your critical mind though for the next few days, so that you can really deep dive into some of the things. You can come back and go, you know what, that just didn't work for me, and that's okay. One of the amazing things about healing is being open to all possibilities and open to all the information. And unless we are truly open to something, we can't actually see whether it will be for our benefit or for our not benefit. Or something that won't benefit us. But basically the key to it all, the key to all learning, is an open mind, and you're creating possibilities for not knowing and witnessing your resistance, because usually a closed mind means you're resisting something, which is exactly where your healing is. And you can come back to this as many times as you need to. So this course, I'm going to keep it available online. I have run it live in the past, but because there are so many people who want access to it, I really wanted to have it available for whenever you're feeling drawn to it. So this is loving and learning yourself. It's a practice, and it's not a destination. It's a relationship that continually evolves. And just when you think that you've got yourself figured out, there's another level there, and that's just the way that it's going to be forever. We can't escape ourselves. There is something that I did want to say though about pain and experiences and that sort of thing, and that is about qualifying your own personal pain. So we are very empathetic beings. We also are very natural comparers. So we've come from a place where we like to be able to fit in, and we kind of go, okay, well, is that person's experience harder or not as hard as ours? And we try and compare ourselves to figure out where we fit and where everyone else around us fits. So that sometimes means that when either we express our trauma or someone else expresses their pain and trauma, we try and we see how we would feel in that situation, and we compare our own struggles to theirs. And what this does is it diminishes the personal experience. So I would really suggest, like when you're getting into language around, oh, but mine wasn't so bad because this and this and this didn't happen. Just because someone's experience, it might sound worse to you, it actually doesn't disqualify you from feeling pain or trauma around that. There's still healing that needs to be done. So I would say try as best you can to be conscious of those feelings of disqualifying your pain and trauma, as well as overqualifying it and disqualifying someone else's. Yeah, that's just something that I know has come up quite a fair bit, because people try and say, look, maybe I'm overreacting about this, it wasn't that bad. But if it keeps on showing up for you, then there's definitely a level of healing there. And it doesn't matter if it was a little thing or a big thing, and who's to say what's big and little. It's still affecting you and it's not working for you, and then therefore it needs healing. Yeah, so just because someone had a difficult journey does not make their journey any less relevant or any more relevant than yours. All right. Okay, who am I? I have experience, so I am Katie. I have experienced the heaviness of self-loathing, and I continue to overcome the limiting beliefs that I have developed along my lifetime. I continue to work on my relationship with myself, as it is a practice, but it's something that I look forward to now. I notice that I am more open to a lot of things where I used to be so scared to look. I used to feel a lot of shame around who I am. And in all honesty, I probably still do. This is an evolution. I'm still discovering new things about myself. There's still different triggers that I'm grateful to have a system and support around me that are able to call me a bit on my bullshit, which I'm really grateful for. And yes, I'm continually getting to know myself, but I'm open to myself now, which has taken a long time, many years of research and lots of learning and courses like this, and my own studies in kinesiology. I am a kinesiologist and a coach and mentor, and I have been since 2012. And I've worked with so many women, and I've noticed, because I've gone through so many big transitions, particularly through 2010, well, there's the transition of motherhood, which happened quite early on for me. I was about 20, and then all the transitions through from there, that was 2003 through till now, which is 2020. So many different transitions, so many pivots, so much expectation and conformity, and then non-conformity, and lots of interesting things in there. And therefore, I've noticed that in my clinics, my kinesiology clinics, and a lot of people that I've worked with, a lot of them have gone through big transformations, or are in the process of going through them, or are wanting to go through them. So I seem to naturally have attract people like that, going through big things, which is not easy. It's hard to know what the right thing to do is, but learning yourself and learning your, like, that is going to benefit you no matter where you are at in your life. So yes, I'm a kinesiologist and coach, and I've facilitated so many women with their self-image to move them through self-depreciation and to self-acceptance and then into self-love. So I am also a mother of 4 children, and I have responsibility there as a mother to help shift limiting ancestral paradigms and systemic cultures around self-love, which is something that has come through my line, my bloodline. And now that I have children, it's being carried on to them, but I'm trying my best to clear a lot of that so that I'm not passing it on to them, or at the very least making them conscious of some of those limiting beliefs, so that they have a bit more say in what they choose to believe consciously on a conscious level. And lastly, it's my calling to help sustain individuals through empowerment and love of self, which ripples out to the rest of humanity. So why is the fact that I speak and teach from experience so significant? Yes, I have some qualifications there, which is great, so nice, like a little bit of a stroke to the ego, but in actual fact, having qualifications doesn't necessarily qualify you to talk on emotional topics that are highly personal. Unless if you've ever been in a consultation with someone who is a professional on something and they haven't actually experienced it, it's really hard to articulate how you're feeling, for them to understand you, for there to be a basic, it's one thing to experience something, it's another thing to read it from a textbook. So emotions, I find, have been so pathologized to such a degree that in many professional and medical fields, they're discouraged from speaking and sharing about personal experiences. Many people are advising people based on textbooks, which totally falls short of basic human experience. When we're able to connect on an emotional level and couple that with the information and education, that is where the magic starts to happen and things start to shift. So yes, it's important to acknowledge that there is information and education there to be gained, but unless we actually integrate that on an emotional level, that information isn't actually going to stick. Okay, what is self? So I've had a fair few people comment about using the word self on its own in this course. So this is so many different varying suggestions, but I was in fact very intentional about using the word self. When we fall in love with self, we're acknowledging the entirety of everything that is coming into play within and around us, the universe expressed in ecstatic motion. I like to think of self as the observer and the subject. It's not judgmental, as well as the delightful embodiment of pure love. It is eternal, infinite, and divine. We each have varying strengths and weaknesses in each of these elements of self, which is so important. So if you have a look, our self is made up of so many different sub-selves. So emotions has the self of anxiety, fear, sadness. Physical has the stomach, the legs, the breasts. We have a relationship with each of these components. So we have a mental self, which is ego. It's also our monkey mind that runs rampant, our mindset, conditioning, perceptions, reasoning. We have a physical self, which is our fleshy, earthy human casing, our body, our environment that we find ourselves in. We have an emotional self, our feelings, our compulsions, reactions to beliefs. We have our higher self, which is our intuition, our spiritual, our mindfulness, our internal love and surrender. So our self is the embodiment of the existence of you that is infinite. It is the culmination of all of this. Self is the entire universe presenting in the form of you, the part that is connected to everything, your piece of the universal puzzle, the drop in the ocean that is the ocean in its entirety. Our relationship with ourself, is the most important relationship of our lives, and we have been culturally shamed away from it. How you feel about yourself will determine how you approach anything and everything. It is the undercurrent of every decision you make: food, music, friends, thoughts, feelings, the behaviors of others that you accept, the partner you choose, how much money you have, boundaries, clothes, etc. When this relationship is your highest priority, it means that you show up as your best self with others. It's not selfish. It's your most important job. If anything, it is the main job that is your highest responsibility is to yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, just like that whole oxygen mask, then how are you ever going to be able to help others? And you're literally just teaching other children and your children and everyone else around you to put themselves second. But it is something that has actually been glorified, and to put yourself first has been vilified. That's where a little story might come in useful. So, story time. Once upon a time, there was a little baby girl. Every goo and ga was celebrated, and most of all by herself. Every smile adored. She loved everything and everyone so deeply, because in her little world, everything was love. She was love. She loved herself in such a way that she didn't even notice she loved herself. It was so easy and abundant. Love is her natural state. Her stumbles as she learnt to walk were celebrated. The words said out of place and incorrect were adored, cooed over. She'd suck her toes, play with her fingers on each hand, inspecting with wonder. She would escape a fluffy towel at bath time to cheekily run around naked, laughing and basking in the delightful sensation her skin, her naked body felt against nothing but air. As she grew older, bit by bit, her light dimmed. She'd hear the way her mum spoke about her naked body, and she stopped wanting to show hers. She was reprimanding for using words in the wrong order. She grew fearful of making a wrong move. She loved to feel loved, so she tried everything she could to become lovable again. Then she'd hear stories of happily ever after, that you can be loved and safe in love if you find a man and had children. So her desire was to then concrete her worth and who she was for others. When once she was celebrated and cared for herself, it was now vilified to think of your needs before others' needs. Small sacrifices were at first celebrated, so she, bit by bit, sacrificed a little more and a little more. It became less celebrated the more she sacrificed. Her body changed, and she was now wanted in a different way. She felt a sense of worth, power, and since that was the attention from men, if that kind of attention from men came easily, She again, bit by bit, moved to the demand of external validation. She found a man who wanted her, and they married. Her happily ever after was almost complete. A baby came along, and she thought that would bring her more love, and it did. Though her young, firm body had morphed again, and she noticed her husband didn't want her in the same way he used to. She dieted and spat resentful comments at the mirror, reflecting the evidence of a life she'd created inside her body. Stretched, scarred, dimpled. If only she hadn't hated this body before it grew the tiny human. She starved herself, then overconsumed for comfort. She purged. She tried sweating it into submission. It worked at times, but never for long. She was so comfortable in her skin. She was so uncomfortable, with her skin being seen. Her husband tried to touch her, and she would compare herself to a younger self and refuse in embarrassment. She would dress quickly in clothes that hid her shape and her skin. She didn't like the feeling of the air on her naked skin. Her fear of being rejected and her vast acknowledgement of her imperfection led her to self-soothe further. She hid, trying to keep her body still so as to disconnect from feeling it. She squashed her dreams for fear of being seen, to try something new and maybe fail, but also afraid to succeed. Because how could she be celebrated when she doesn't look, sound, act, move perfectly? Her husband grew tired of trying to prop her up, that he withdrew his advances, and his light began to dim. Their daughter, once playful in her own body, started to resent her adolescence, becoming nervous to speak up. Does this sound like a familiar story? Maybe some elements will be different for you, but perhaps many of us were conditioned in a very similar way through fairy tales, Disney princesses, and our own parents and culture. We were taught to put others' needs above our own, not to be impolite, that our worth can be summed up in who and what we can be to others, that the epitome of a woman is to be everything to everyone and not be needy. Be sexy, the perfect mother and homemaker, an entrepreneur, philanthropist, and most importantly, smile through it all, because this is the dream. I'm not here to push any agenda. Stay-at-home mom, decidedly single, career mom, consciously not having children, undecided. I'm not here to say what it is that you should want. I'm here to say that what it is that you do want is valid simply because you want it. Our desires show us where our path is. Basically, what you want is valid and needs no more to qualify its worth. There isn't one set ideal. The idea that our worth is ever based on anyone else is a systemic idea that keeps people small, keeps people quiet and unseen. I myself, I'm a passionate parent. I love being a mother. I find it so fulfilling. My kids are my second highest priority. The first is myself, because they won't always be reliant on me so heavily, at least not if I do my job right. But they will notice how I treat myself. And if they see me prioritizing everyone else, they will too. It doesn't take away from them. It actually magnifies how I can show up for them. When I am taking care of myself, I have more to give them. I'm not tired, I'm not exhausted, I'm not shooing them away. They're not taking. They don't feel guilty so much. And we all have our own journey, but for us for those of us who are mothers or teachers, to be able to show as an example to the children, the future adults in their life, that being an adult it's not just miserable and doing things for everyone else. It's also being able to enjoy and love our own selves and take care of our own selves. That's what we can pass on. That's invaluable. So how do you show up for others as well as put yourself first? Doesn't someone miss out? Think of the analogy of the oxygen mask. You cannot fill up from an empty cup. So this is where I let you know a few things that may rock your world. No one is ever going to give you enough of themselves to feel the lack of your own self-love. We have all felt the pressure of unrealistic expectations. The idea that another individual can somehow fulfill us is completely unrealistic. I'm talking a romantic partner, a friend, anything. We cannot rely on other people for that sense of love that we can only get for ourselves. You will never feel enough love from someone else that will make a difference or an impact on your own lack of self-love. It's like a bottomless void that you're just going to keep on consuming because you don't have that for yourself. We are our only constant companion. There is no escaping from ourselves, so we might as well put the effort in to get to know and love ourselves. Our self is always there, waiting for our return, always forgiving, always accepting, always allowing. If not me, then who? And if not now, then when? How long have you waited for the greatest love story of your life? How long have you waited to be absolutely unconditionally loved and accepted and seen for who you are? And if you're waiting for that in someone else, you will be waiting forever, because the only person who can truly give that to you is yourself. If you don't see yourself as someone worthy to love and cherish, why place that expectation on another? This doesn't mean you'll never need anyone else, but that you'll bring your full self to everyone else, unashamed and unrestrained, free. Now let's play a little game. If self-love were a percentage, what would your percentage of self-love be? Let's not judge it. Don't dwell on it for too long. It's just the exact first number that pops into your mind. Don't judge it. Don't try and figure out why or where it came from, or it was this person and they did this and no, none of that. It's just a number. Let it be what it is. Let's just say you love yourself 20% and someone comes along and offers you 30%. You're going to feel as though you have hit the jackpot. Like 30% is actually really quite low. Now consider if you loved yourself 100% or 99, because no one's perfect. You wouldn't dream of settling for a love that is 30%. How would you show up in the world differently if you showed up as 99% self-love or even 70%? What behaviors would you no longer tolerate? What way of presenting yourself would you no longer tolerate? How would you speak? How would you move? How would you act? What time would you wake up in the morning? What job would you have? What would your bank account be? You are your own soulmate. The universal language is love. When you can supply your own love, you are vibing on universal energy. Imagine we each discover ourselves. We fall in love with our divinity, our imperfection, our humanness, and we bring that version of ourselves to our village, our family, our friends, our partners, our lover. Would they be at all in a disadvantage? There is no destination. It's a relationship. You already have a relationship with yourself, whether you like it or not. The quality of that relationship, though, depends on the effort you put in. So there's a song that Elsa sings in, what's it called? In Frozen 2. And it's spectacular. If you wanted to hear it, I'm on YouTube and I saved it into a playlist, which is the Falling in Love with Self collaboration playlist. I think it's called Show Yourself, but it says, show yourself, step into your power, throw yourself into something new. You are the one you've been waiting for all of my life. And to be honest, when I discovered so much about myself and as I continued to grow that relationship, I was amazed at my strength, at how human I can be, and I started to kind of have fun with myself. I stopped being so scared of losing people, and they're lessons that I've had to go back and relearn at different times, but stepping away from relationships that were no longer serving me was a really big thing for me. Stepping in and trusting myself with different things, you know, to a degree that I hadn't felt before. It's like I discovered this incredible secret that had always been with me, that I'd never really acknowledged or given time to. But it was like the biggest, most incredible secret I'd ever discovered when I started to see my worth and my value to myself, and then going to myself and going inward when I needed to solve problems, instead of just going and asking everyone else what their opinions were, really seeking my own higher self and what that opinion was. That was game changing for me, almost like finding the love of my life and my soulmate. It was with me the whole time, and I just needed to uncover it and hold space and learn about her, which has been so exciting to me. It's the greatest love story of my life. Are you ready to meet your soulmate? She's been waiting so long, all of your life. Every great love story starts with an introduction. You need to go through the initial awkward stage and build on it, just like any other dating, any other relationship. If she's important enough to you, you'll find time for her. By doing so, you will literally be enhancing your relationship with everyone and everything else in your life. It all starts with you. She's not going anywhere. She won't break up with you. She can't run away. She won't ghost you. She's here to stay, always with you. So here's a couple of things to consider. There will always be other people who are threatened by your love of self. They are usually benefiting from your lack of love. Really consider that for a moment. Is it safer to stay in the lack of love or release the fear of losing someone else to gain your self-love? I know that that's an uncomfortable topic, and there are going to be some that sits really uneasy with. But sometimes that might be our partner or the other parent of our children. It could be a parent, it could be a child, it could be a sibling, a best friend. There are some people who struggle with their own self-love and then reflect that onto others, and they choose to surround themselves with people who struggle with self-love. And then the moment you start setting up these boundaries for yourself and showing up in a place of love and respect for yourself, they feel threatened and they might act out. And is it worth continually compromising yourself to have those relationships? That's not something that anyone can ever tell you is what the right thing to do and not do is, but it is something to consider just moving forward. All right, here's some workbooks for you. So the workbook is printable PDF. I know day one there is an image at the end, but it's a pretty great reference for future, just future information. It's a really good reference. In the workbook, go through and fill in the questions. They might be easy, and you might think that they're just kind of superficial, but approach it with a playful curiosity. Like you're on your first date. During this process, be really vulnerable and honest. Show up without judgment for yourself. You are the observer as well as the subject. Changing habits and releasing limiting beliefs has more to do with the releasing the old than it does for focusing on the new and forcing the new. Let it go. Surrender. When you take off the weight of old expectations, it lightens your journey. So basically, when we start to release something naturally will start to grow in that place because you've created a space. So the hardest part is the releasing. The easy part, or the easier part, the more joyful and fun part, is with the allowing of something new. So what is it that you are tired of carrying? What do you need to apologize to your younger self for? A lot of our limiting beliefs and self-depreciating narratives come from the adults in our lives. From our childhood, we were sometimes said, some things were said off a whim that could have been a long-standing systemic or cultural conditionings that our parents subscribed to. At the end of the day, we chose them. There was a point in time where you chose all your current limiting beliefs and the ones that aren't limiting. We choose our beliefs and we decided to believe them. And those beliefs served us for a time, but that may no longer be the case. And you also get to choose whether to keep them or whether to change them, release them. There is no point placing blame on others. Our parents did the best they could with the information and their life experiences. They are human too. And no, we look to our parents to be that comfort, that safety for us, that sure thing, but they won't be, because they are just as human, and they are also a product of their parents and their upbringing, their cultures and their experiences and their beliefs. So not blaming others and acknowledging that it no longer serves you is sometimes enough to start breaking the link, to stop that from continuing. So this is the part where the hypnosis that you've got in your pack actually works wonders. Hypnosis helps with much of the reconditioning of the subconscious mind. It also incorporates the theta brain waves, which help the mind to be in a more relaxed and suggestible state. So up until the age of 7, we are a walking, talking, functioning subconscious mind. We're like a sponge, and we just soak up all of those ideas and beliefs that our parents had and other influential adults as well. And we use them to create our own beliefs, which run as programs back in the background, which determine our habits, our compulsions, our perspectives, our beliefs, our attitudes towards things. So this hypnosis, it's best done in the morning and in the evening, but not to fall asleep to. And the reason being is you want to be able to stay in that semi-conscious state. If your mind goes to sleep, it's less suggestible because it's resting. So it's ideal when the brain is relaxed and not sleepy. And doing it twice a day in the morning and evening is a great time for your brain to be a lot more receptive. Okay, write your story. What has your story been so far? Write out a synopsis. It doesn't have to be huge and detailed, but like a basic, like a back of a book. What has your story been up to this point? Write it as though it is being read by a narrator, so in third person. When is the plot twist? Do you continue on the same, do you continue on the same wavelength for a while? Or have you decided that you've had enough and you're ready to throw in a plot twist? You are the main character, the hero of your story. Forget the how. This is not what we're focusing on in our story. Focus on the vision. What will it look like 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? What happens when you jump ahead and you've made those changes that you want to make? When you start to love yourself, when you start approaching life, asking the questions, what would I choose if I loved myself completely? What life have you created yourself once you fell in love with yourself? Nothing will change for you unless you acknowledge your stories and let go of the story that you have around your life up until this point. We need to come to a place of acceptance and release before we can create the plot twist. How do you describe yourself right now? What made you the way you are? Read over it. Where is the weight, like the emotional charge in the story? Where is that? This is the narrative that you keep on coming back to. Until we release the attachment to our story, we will continue on the same story. We will be a victim to our story. How will you know that you've released it? Well, you'll know when you can tell it. It'll be like replaying a record, a story you've heard 1,000 times and no longer react to. You don't blame or feel the emotional pull that you once did. So if you need to, you can pause this video and write your story down so far, if you're feeling like you're in that place. If not, you can come back to it later. So now it's time for the plot twist. If you're ready, if you're happy with the way you're going, then I'm not exactly sure why you're here, but there's always room for improvement. The plot twist. This is where you can get as creative as you like. Get fantastical. This is where you get to play with any alter ego that you've been hiding. Write it in third person as though you're someone who is narrating the future, as though it's the present though. Think about what your theme song will be. How will you walk? How will you talk? How will you dress? What kind of a job or a business are you in? What are some of your favorite hobbies? What kind of friends do you have around you? What's your bank account like? What kind of car are you driving? Where do you live? What are your daily habits? This is the part where the main character in the story has become the hero. So what do you look like? Play with it. What is your theme song? That's going to be important, especially for tomorrow. What is your theme song? Story time. Okay. Last year, I fell in love with someone. True story. Let's call him Mark. Definitely isn't his name, but that's what we're going to go with. I felt for the first time as though I had actually found my soulmate. We clicked instantly. He was extremely attentive and adoring of so many of the things that I was insecure about. I found myself adoring things in him that I had actually been embarrassed about in my own self. So I found myself completely endeared to him. And I thought it was so interesting because I'm like, I absolutely adore this about him, even though I see that in myself and I really don't like that. Like, he didn't say things the exact right way. And I've always been so hard on making sure I get the words right and I express my sentiments properly without worrying about someone else getting offended. Whereas he would state his feelings as his feelings, uncensored. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I found it a lot easier to start to love some of those qualities in myself while I was loving them in him. So it actually didn't work out for me and Mark. And I'm grateful for that. Ironically, I ended the winter whirlwind romance by choosing myself over my soulmate. And to me, that was a major win and growth on my part. I was so proud of myself. I know that sounds unusual, but I was so proud of myself. So what's the point of this little story? At that time, I thought that I had found my soulmate. But since I also recognized that he wasn't in a place to receive me, and I was compromising so much of myself, I chose myself. I chose to love me, to look to myself for the love that I needed. It was not easy. I cried so much. But it was so incredibly liberating to know that I could choose myself and that I was still safe in myself. There was a safety I felt as soon as I made the decision to release that relationship and focus inward. It came with a veil of strength I had known was there, but I knew it was there, but I was so afraid I wouldn't find it when I needed it, or it wouldn't catch me. Oh, get emotional just thinking about it. I turned to myself, and myself received me 100% with open arms. I learned so much about myself during that process, and I feel so much safety in the love that I have for myself now. I trust that myself will always be there to catch me, no matter what I go through, no matter how heavy some of those feelings will be and how much grief that I have around losing someone in my life. I know that myself is there for me. I know it'll always be available as soon as I lean into it. That self is the parent that I always wanted. That self is the lover I've always wanted. And that self is the best friend that I always wanted. And she was there for me. And she was proud of me. And I'm proud of me. Whew. To love ourselves is to learn about our shadow side and to love that too. Think about when you fall in love with someone and everything they do, you just adore. The jokes might not even be that funny, but you laugh because you just adore them. Invite yourself to step in as the observer. Create a safe space to explore yourself without judgment. This is just to observe. There is a story of two wolves. You've probably heard it. The one you feed gets stronger. But what about the other one? Does it get left in the cold? Who made that one wrong or bad? Why aren't we feeding that one too, or at least loving it? Is there a possibility that the more you starve it, the hungrier it gets, the angrier it gets, the more aggressive it gets? What if instead of it being a wolf, we make it a little child who is begging for attention and love? Is there a possibility that there is an aspect to that child that could actually benefit our life? Consider the masculine and the feminine. Which one is wrong? Which one is bad? They both have different qualities, but neither is bad or wrong or better or worse. What is your shadow side trying to show you? What happens when you avoid a child who is begging for attention? They end up screaming at you. They refuse to go away and to be avoided. There is something that your shadow side has to teach you. Think about the yin and the yang, the black and the white. Neither can really exist without the other. What scares you about holding space to observe your shadow side? What are you afraid of? By the way, holding space is to allow another to express their emotions freely without judgment and without taking anything on personally. It's reserving the meaning so you don't make it mean anything. So you probably heard the term holding space. It's really just a point of allowing and observing. Reserving any judgment, no judgment. So ego. Ego can present as a shadow side. This requires calling it what it is. So ego is like a 5-year-old child. It is usually anxious and steeped in lack. It needs reassurance. It's not bad. Ego isn't bad. It gets a bad rap, but it's actually not bad. It's part of us that keeps us alive. It keeps us safe. It plays within those fears and those anxieties to keep us safe. So it's why we don't get too close to the edge of a cliff. And it tells us to watch the road well before crossing. It compares you to others to make sure that you're not straying from the median expectations of the tribe. It helps to keep you alive. So calling it bad is actually not the best thing to do. It's not in your highest good. It's just another part of you that needs attention and understanding and love. So what would it look like if you accepted this shadow side, all those uncomfortable things that you're anxious to look at as a friend? What would it look like if you didn't fear it? Where is the glory hiding in it? The freedom hiding in it? Accept the imperfections. Imperfections are inevitable. Consider, you wouldn't start playing a game that you knew you couldn't win. You know you have no chance of winning. Would you play the game? Perfectionism is literally entering into a game that you will never win. It's steeped in external validation or a belief that you are not worthy exactly as you are. You are the universe presenting in human form. We are worthy exactly as we are. What we receive in life is predicated on our vibration, not how good we are, not how bad we are. It's our vibration. That's what we receive. What we think, how we feel, what we do, and what we believe, it's all predicated on our vibration. We can be vibing really high. We can be in that cycle of giving and receiving, and things can be amazing, or we can feel closed and unworthy, which means things don't come in. Think about our hands. When your hands are closed, you can't receive. When your hands are open, you can receive so much more. We get what our vibration allows us to receive, and we give what our vibration allows us to give. The paradox of acceptance before change. Before we can shift a limiting belief or an old pattern or a negative mindset, fixed mindset, there is an element of surrender or acceptance that we need to come to first. That releases the resistance to the change. When we are emitting the vibration of wanting change, we attract more of wanting change. Look to move up the scale of consciousness, which is going to be our next slide. Assess where you are now. Trying to jump 5 levels may create resistance. But if you aim to just feel 1 level higher, it's much easier to move up it. All right, here we are. This is the scale of consciousness. So we see there's force on the bottom, which is where we're forcing, it's using a lot of energy. Then there is true power at the top. Now, if you see log, that's basically a vibrational hertz, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but it's basically how we quantify the different emotions. So when it comes to our shadow side, bad habits, past mistakes, things that we usually beat ourselves up over, we come in at around the guilt and shame, which is about the 20 level, let's call it level 20. 20, 30, that's around the shame, guilt. It's extremely isolating. We feel as though we don't want to tell anyone about it. We don't want to share it with anyone. We want to make sure that no one knows, because that way we won't run the risk of being excluded from the tribe or the village. If you have a look a little higher than that, you'll see that apathy is higher than shame. Anger is even higher than apathy. Courage is higher again, and acceptance is actually quite a lot higher. So to come to a place of acceptance might not be very easy. So what we could do though is moving from shame and guilt to apathy. Well, I don't really care. Then when we go through a stage of grief, oh, I grieve that the innocence that I lost when I made that decision or whatever. So if we can get to a place where we accept the version of ourselves by moving up that scale of consciousness, working through those emotions, that is showing up in this very moment. We release resistance to changing it, therefore making it easier to change. I love a good paradox. So the more we try and force and make change happen, especially when it comes to our emotions and our vibration, we get stuck in the vibration of continually trying and wanting change. But when we release it and surrender it and allow it to be, it actually becomes a lot more transient and you can move through it easier, as you can see there. So this actually is a printout in your workbooks. which I think will be really beneficial as a reference point for journaling and that sort of thing, to check in, where are you at, you know, and then seeing if you can move through those consciously. All right, time for homework. Okay, our homework is to print out and complete your day 1 workbook before day 2. So I usually suggest giving it a full 24 hours before you do day 2, and that'll give you enough time to watch this video, go through your workbook, start to integrate some of the things. I also suggest waiting a couple of hours before you do your workbook after watching the video. That way your mind has been able to process some of the things that we've talked about, and you'll be able to give some insightful insight. You'll have different insights when you do it after a few hours as opposed to right away. But you might feel drawn to do it right away. Trust your intuition on that. Use the hypnosis. Listen to it twice a day. This is reprogramming your mind to come to a place of self-love and acceptance. Instead of your usual judgmental conversations with yourself, start to just observe. Observe your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, what you do, why you do things, why you choose the things you choose, all of it. What's triggering you? Your 7-year-old self programmed much of why you do what you do. And it might be time for an upgrade. Just make notes of it. And for the day 1 challenge, if you feel inspired to, you can take a photo of yourself on Instagram with the words, I am worthy of love exactly as I am. Some past students have written it on their hand, written it in the surf, painted it, drew it, however you like to do it. I am worthy of love exactly as I am. And then make sure you tag me at Wild Woman Free on Instagram. You can use the hashtag FILWS, Falling in Love with Self. I would love to see that. I'm going to stop share. I really appreciate you joining me on day 1. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I really look forward to bringing you day 2, which is about the body. And yeah, all the best with the workbook. Much love.